Has Suraj logged in? Live on YouTube, Suman.
Hi, Srini, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Good evening, Suman. I can hear you.
Okay, great. Let me also try and get KK.
Yeah, KK is here.
Yeah, hi, KK. Surit, are you there?
Yes, Suman, I'm on. Can
Great.
you
Can you just...
hear and see me all right?
I can see you.
Okay.
Yes, I
Okay.
can see you. Super.
We can hear you and see you, Suraj and KK and Suman.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay, so I think it's already 5:02. We have about 25 participants currently. So we'll just give it a couple of more minutes. A lot of people have signed up, and then we can get started. So can I request the participants to, mute yourself and also, stop the video. That will also conserve bandwidth. And the panelists, I'll request them to put on their video so we can see everyone.
Suman, yeah, I'll switch on the video for first couple of minutes, then I'll go back behind the camera. Simply because the
Fair enough. I think once we get started in
bandwidth
a
consumes
few
immensely.
minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. I mean, as long as it's working, I mean, maybe once we get rolling, then you can kind of stop it. Okay, so I think we'll get started. We have about 30 people already showing up.
I think we should
So
start.
good afternoon, good evening, morning. Sorry, Srini, you were saying something? Okay. Oh, okay.
Shuman, don't worry. When I go to speak, I will unmute.
Okay, super. So good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. I know people are joining from a lot of places. I'm really excited to host this show, this talk, interesting topic, and a very interesting panel, right? So one is a master coach, one is a corporate honcho, and one is a serial entrepreneur. So first of all, thank you all for taking time out to attend. We are also live streaming this on YouTube. Let me just quickly show you the link to that. So if you see, there is a link there, right? So the quicker way to do it is to actually go to our events page, which is just inroads.co.in/events. When you go there, you'll see the link. And if through the link, you can actually join on YouTube as well. Okay, couple of housekeeping items. So as I said earlier, kindly keep your video and audio off. For whatever questions you have, just use the chat button. Put in your questions and we will try and address all of those towards the end when we have the Q&A. Okay, so let me start by introducing the panel. We have Mr. Krishna Kumar, popularly known as KK. KK is an alumnus of IIT Madras and IIM Bangalore. He's the founder of the Intrad School of Executive Coaching. KK wears many hats as a corporate executive, entrepreneur, management consultant, B School faculty, and also a tennis coach. Welcome, KK.
Thank you, Suman. Delighted to be here today.
Great. My next guest is Mr. Srinivasan Ramakrishnan, popularly known as Srini. He's co-founder of CL Educate, which was earlier called Career Launcher. Many of you would have heard of Career Launcher. They've been doing a great work for many, many years now. I know Srini from our MBA days at IIM Bangalore. And right from those days, he has nurtured his creative side and stayed true to his passion. It is evident from his LinkedIn profile. The tagline reads many things: traveler, learner, life coach, investor, photographer, impresario. I must admit, I had to look that up as to what that meant. Okay, so welcome, Srini.
Thank you, Suman. Thank you. Looking forward to a great learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely. My next guest is Mr. Surit Brahma. He's worked in several top MNCs like GE, Deloitte, Wipro. He's currently the Chief Technology Officer of WNS Global Services. He's an alumnus of IIT Kharagpur and IIM Calcutta. My association with Surit dates back to late 80s when we were hallmates in Kharagpur. Welcome, Surit. You're on mute.
Hi everyone, can you hear me now? Suman, I was unmuted by the host, but hope you guys are able to hear me. Hi everyone, glad to be here. Would love to, share the thoughts and hear from all of you over the next hour. Thank you.
Super. And lastly, it's me. I'm the host. My name is Suman Ghosh. I'm the co-founder of Inroads. We are a boutique leadership development firm. We're a small firm. My partner, Veena, she's also on the call. She's also helping out. We're passionate about working with with individuals as well as companies to enhance performance. And we do it normally through coaching, training, and consulting. Some of the specialized areas we work in is high performance mindset, organizational culture, diversity and inclusion, emotional intelligence. The last one is actually very close to my heart. I wrote a book on EQ called From Command to Empathy, Using EQ in the Age of Disruption, which is published by HarperCollins. We do lots of blogs, video logs, expert chats, webinars such as this. So do visit our, our site and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Great. So with that introduction done, let's get started. I'm excited because, as I said earlier, diverse, interesting topic, and that people are also very interesting. And I just realized that I'm speaking to a Brahma, a Rama, and a Krishna. So this should be nothing less than a divine experience, right? So what we're going to do is essentially look at it from, before that, the topic is really about reboot, relaunch, and rule, reinventing the self. And we felt that it's more than reskilling. We need to really, time has come that we really need to reflect and reboot because it can be, the world ahead can be very different from what we are used to. So the way we're going to structure this is we have about 60 minutes to do the talk, and then we'll open up for Q&A and end with the closing. And in the talk, we're going to kind of look at it from three levels. One is the global, or like a world view. The other could be the org level, what's happening in organizations. And the third thing could be the individual level, because it's impacting all of us as individuals. Okay, so starting with a global perspective. So let me come to you, KK. KK, by the way, I don't see you. If you can just put on your video. Great.
Yeah.
So let me come to you, KK. The pandemic has impacted each one of us, and in ways we could not comprehend, and definitely we were not prepared for it. The good news is that now we are emerging from this lockdown or shutdown. Now, should we view this merely as a speed bump, that once we get over it, we go back to the life we know and are comfortable with? Or will there be some fundamental changes which will really require us to reboot and relaunch?
It's always difficult to be the first to answer any question that is so macro. But let me begin by just linking this back to events that in our lifetime we may have seen in the last 20, 30 years. And while there have been financial crises, as we know, that happened in 2008, 2009 that we encountered, there have been world wars that our parents perhaps saw. Nothing has ever been like this. So while perhaps we may say in our lifetime we saw a few speed bumps, what we are really seeing in front of us is something quite different. I think it would really be a no-brainer to put it that way. But the more important thing is not so much as the speed bump as to think in terms of what does the future hold, and will we emerge from this, whenever that is, a few months down the road, hopefully, in exactly the same way that we were, and start continuing life the same way that we did all along. My view, and I guess in many ways that would be shared by most people, is that it's most unlikely. It's most unlikely not because we don't want it that way, but I guess we won't be allowed to continue the way we would hope to want to continue. Everybody wants to go back to having life the way it exactly was. I mean, that's our deepest hope, and I'm sure most people want to be in that same zone of comfort, but it's unlikely. And the reason it's unlikely, to put it in simplistic terms, is the change has already happened. Whether we like it or not, it's a very deep fundamental behavioral change that we have already experienced somewhere beginning January. It has happened gently and then accelerated, and today it is imbibed within us. Now, what will those changes be? How will we react? I don't know. My guess is as good as yours. But all I can say to answer this question in a quick way is that, or in a very short line, is in my considered humble opinion, I doubt very much we will be the same person we were 2 months ago or 2 months from now. So that's a quick answer at the moment, and
Okay.
perhaps we can delve deeper into it as we go along.
Definitely. Thanks. Surid, would you like to just comment on this point?
Sure, Suman, and of course, as KK mentioned, this is something unprecedented. We haven't seen anything like this. But the bigger challenge, that I see, Suman and everyone, is that, of course, there are comparison to the financial crisis, the dot-com burst and all that. I feel that this is more, the unknown part is really much higher this time, Nobody can really say that, when this will get over. In fact, I'm sure, all of you receive WhatsApp jokes and other stuff, There's a term called BC and AC right now, right? Before Corona and after Corona, right? So, we talk about new normal, and if you ask me, will there be change? Absolutely, yes. I don't think, things will go back to the way it was before Corona. There will be a change.
Mm-hmm.
Can we predict that, what the new picture would be? We talk about new normal. Can we predict what the new normal would be? My view would be, not as easy, because everyone will go through a change. Companies will go through change. Individuals will go through change. Everything will go through change. But yes, that's what probably we need to talk about and figure out. But to answer your point, Suman, agree with KK, and yes, there would be a new normal. There would be a change.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is the short answer is no, we cannot, it's not going to be the going back to where we were. There are going to be some structural changes happening,
Yes.
which we need to deal with.
And we'll explain during the course of the conversation.
Right. Great. Srini, would you like to, and I know we will get into, the details into each of those topics, but would you like to share a few things right at the top?
My thought is this. A lot of things have been happening quite dramatically over the last few years, many redefined by the disruptive technologies. And a segment of population and people have been talking about environment and sustainability are more important things that most of the leaders of the world shunned, but the corona has hit the whole world so hard. I think the sustainability and environmental issues are going to come at the top. So the sustainability environment plus disruptive technologies, both of them are going to play a very big role in transforming the future. And the COVID is just the beginning. And as rightly been said, in terms of, I'm sure very few people will take his suitcase and board a flight in the next 2 years. And forget about it. You will think 100 times going to a nearby restaurant. So it is a changed paradigm for years to come. And this will force every paradigm to be changed. And this is here for real, and good that it is for real. I think it has shaken the lethargic and lazy, and it has questioned even those who are smart. Over to you.
Great. I like that part of shaken the lethargic and the lazy. Okay, so definitely it has shaken everybody. Great. So I think what we are hearing is everybody is saying that obviously the changes are going to be very fundamental, very structural. Let's jump into the little deeper, but still at a overall macro view, the world view. So, KK, question for you. Typically we tend to think incrementally, right? For all of us, whether it's our next job, it's our next role, everything is like we're thinking incrementally. Now, will this serve us well in this new world, going forward?
The word incremental is actually very appropriate. So in this case, as we know, we've been, and Srini mentioned this when he talked about technology, and I know Surat lives that world. It's been happening at such a rapid pace that we, in the past, definitely last 2 decades, we've had barely time to stand still. People have been, particularly in the corporate world, people have been moving at some kind of speed which is, I would say, unheard of in the decades that came before. Primarily, I think, brought about by technology. It's been a major game changer. But again, a lot of that has been very linear. The speed of linearity may be, faster than before, but it's been linear. And we can use linear, exponential, whatever it is. But what's going to happen to us going forward? And that's where this incremental thing comes, because what's going to happen to us is that linearity is not going to work anymore. It's not just even a paradigm shift that's going to take place. It's going to be a deep fundamental behavioral shift that's going to happen globally. Even the very definition of what is global is going to have to change. For a long time, the concept, the worldview was that people moved, and they said globalization was nothing but another way of finding the cheapest place to produce some goods or deliver some service. And much of that happened because of, let's face it, currency arbitrage and so on. So people came to India. It started many years ago, as many of us know on this call, with industries like the textile business. And then later on, it moved to IT, offshoring of businesses, outsourcing them in the BPOs and so on. And everything was really linked to that. That was the definition of so-called globalization. Today, it's going to change a lot. In my limited opinion, I would say that what we're going to see because of this, I would say, completely life-changing experience we're all, at the moment experiencing, what's going to happen is people are going to have to look inwards much more than they did before. People are going to ask themselves, ourselves, not just as individuals, but as countries perhaps, how much do we need the world outside and in what form? That form is going to change because supply chains are disrupted today. It doesn't matter which country, where, but there's a lot of stress in the system because of that. So tomorrow, the emphasis is going to be, and I will actually have to mention the word that our Prime Minister used yesterday, but perhaps in a different context, when he said self-reliant. Now, self-reliant in the pre-liberalization days meant we don't need anybody else, we'll survive on our own. Today, that's not possible, but the definition of self-reliance is going to change quite considerably to mean that we will definitely have a lot of interaction with the outside world, but on our terms with less dependencies. To begin with, I'm not getting into the nitty-gritty. I will leave it to people who have lots of experience here, but that's my quick thought. And if we were to continue this incrementalization, as we call it, that path, and incidentally, Suman and Srini would just wanted to mention to you that that word I first heard from a professor who was like one of my gurus, whom you both also had studied with, Professor Tirunarayan at IIM Bangalore. And he coined this peculiar phrase. He said, incrementalization leads to fossilization. I mean, that fossilization, incrementalization, I don't know, we got to check the dictionary if they exist. But it's nice management jargon. But what he fundamentally meant was if you continue incremental progress, at some stage you will end up like a fossil. And perhaps while he's not with us anymore, he's probably turned out to be someone who seems to have predicted something like this. So with that, I'm just going to take a step back and leave it to the rest of you to share your thoughts too, and over to you, Sumi. Thank you. Back to you, Suma.
That's very interesting. I respect him a lot, Professor Tirunarayan. And he must have said this a long time back, right? So this was before, using Surit's words, BC, in BC area, right? Before Corona era. So which also means that, we already had an issue, and now the world is changing more rapidly. So it's up to us to kind of we can grab that opportunity. But I think a lot of changes need to be made. So let me come to you, Surit. So, continuing on the topic of globalization, what's your view? Yesterday I was watching a talk where Thomas Friedman, who wrote that famous book, right, The World is Flat, and he said the world is flat, right, globalization. But of course, we have seen a lot of changes after that. Is the world really going to remain flat? What's your view, and how do you, from where you sit, how do you see globalization play out going forward?
Yes, Suman, that's an interesting video. And of course, when we heard Tom Friedman, he said the world would become even flatter, right? That's what he said. So,
Yeah.
my point of view, and again, I'm sharing more of my personal thoughts, not necessarily the corporate that I work for. But that actually allows me to see a lot of companies. So there are 2 points. One is globalization versus localization. Other point that you mentioned and KK mentioned is incremental versus disruptive, right? Now, my view on both, I'll probably share. One is, so globalization, across boundaries. What it helped. Was it only while the first model, and since we talked about the some of the global models, especially in technology, while it started as a probably a labor arbitrage, then it very fast moved into a value arbitrage than a labor arbitrage. And I think my view would be that part, which is already, and if you look at any of the large successful technology companies there across the world, so that way, it would remain global. Innovation does not need to be localized to a particular geography or a particular country. It has already, started, and it will probably continue. Now, having said that, I really love the point on incremental versus disruptive, and I'm personally, into it. I always get question, is technology is a change? Is it incremental change? Is it disruptive change? Right? My personal view is that, lot of business models, for the companies, and maybe, I don't want to jump into the next section in terms of the organizations, but if we even talking about a global model, for a company that's operating on a global model, a lot of things will change for them. And the good part is, it's not just technology. Technology was still something that I won't call it virtual, but could be done a lot more easily. Think about moving your supply chain, and if you look at a pharma giant who has most of its production in a certain country, how they would really replan their supply chain, right, without disrupting the services to the end customer, without really adding to the cost, right? So
Yeah.
so that way, globalization would continue to be there, but the basic assumptions we had in terms of the entire supply chain, in terms of the consumer connect and all that, those would undergo a change. And my other take, Suman, it would be very different for each industry, right? We are already seeing that airlines as an industry, as Srini mentioned, we heard Boeing CEO talking about, next, the number of planes that we had in the skies before the corona crisis, it will probably take about at least 2 years to come back to the same number, if not more. So airlines, the hospitality industry, hotel and restaurants will will probably be much more impacted than anybody else. And of course, we saw one of the last major changes, I would say, not an economic event like a financial crisis, but more of after 9/11, when multiple industries were hit, right? Airlines was hit, insurance was hit, and all that. I see this as something that would impact multiple industries. Globalization would stay, but the way we could have globalization earlier, that model will change, and the companies will need to reinvent, because the earlier rules don't apply, earlier assumptions are not no longer valid, and it will be more of reinventing for the companies.
Okay. So over to you, Srini. On the same thing, one thing that's hitting all of us is that, if you look at work has always been a place where you went, right, as opposed to what you did. I think that's a huge, huge difference, right? So every morning, we'd get ready and leave the house, and we went somewhere for work. Whereas right now, the paradigm has completely shifted. Would you like to share your views on how that is shaping, maybe the gig economy and all of that stuff?
Suman, I think this this term now, the new term is WFH. Yeah,
Yes.
I think COVID has really put the focus on quite a few things. That one of the foremost will be the work from home. The organizations have realized perhaps productivity is high working from home. People are willing to work 3 times, but feeling being at home. And it is going to have a great impact in quite a few things. Um, the globalization that we spoke about, and the technology is the way it's functioning. So you will get to realize that the technologies are going to push the borderlessness sitting at home. The organizations are going to downsize big time, and the organizations will be redefining their business models because the fundamental questions are being asked. Technology itself has asked quite a few questions. For example, the advent of smartphone a decade ago perhaps eliminated over 100 industries. And my brother is a psychiatrist working with technology companies in the US. So when I keep talking to him, he said, kindly wait and watch. Mind reading technologies are here, and smartphone will be something of a past. So he is saying that virtual teams will have headbands and they are going to understand each other without even a phone call and a message. So there are many things that are going to come in which will enhance the globalization and borderlessness. But at the same time, the COVID has made everybody look at re-examining the way they've been doing business. And it's going to have a huge impact. Okay. The real estate business, the automobile industry, the travel, it's going to redefine everything. From one side, um, automatic machines, the cars, flying cars and aeroplanes on the streets are coming. Other side, people don't want to go out of their home, and the company is saying sit at home and work. And the way it's going to impact the industries, you cannot imagine. And and I see an exciting time for people. And I can tell you, the companies perhaps, because without any of these COVID and its impact, last couple of years, over 1 lakh people were given pink slips. Even people with 12 years, 15 years work experience in the corporates have been given pink slips because they are not ready to be learners. They don't want to adapt to new things coming up. And now, when the organizations are looking at things with microscope in terms of how they are doing business, whether the real estate is needed, whether the travel is needed, then see what it is going to do. It is going to wreak havoc unless, and I can tell you, the people who are learners and who are creative and have the quest to learn, their salaries perhaps will triple while laying down 1/3 or half of the people. So it's going to be a turmoil in the short run unless people are willing to adapt, people are willing to be at the forefront of the change.
Great. So what I hear you saying, and two very interesting things. One, you're saying that you're not painting a very gloomy picture. You said at one point, I'm very excited, which also means that it depends on how you view it, whether you view it as an opportunity or a threat. And you also said that it will be more merit-based economy, right? So people who are good can actually earn a lot more, whereas people who are not able to learn and adapt will be the ones who will suffer. Okay, so I think
At the same time,
that's a good seg.
Suman, at the same time, just want to say, while you said that, and I also said that,
yeah,
that's why I said that it has shocked and woken up the lethargic and lazy.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, absolutely.
so I think it has given a kick at the back, saying that kindly wake up and do something now.
Mm. So, Surit, let me come to you. We were already kind of in the organization view. You mentioned at one point that companies will have to relook at how they view consumers and customers. So, I just wanted to hear from you how that's going to change, considering that we have been talking about this for a while, but we all know who work in companies. While we talk about it, a lot of the focus is very internal, as opposed to actually focusing on the customer. Do you think going forward that's going to be more important? And what's your view around that?
No, sure, Suman, and that's that's something I think all of us are following very closely in terms of the change in business models. And to be fair, this was there even before Corona, right? I mean,
Yeah.
direct to customer models, right? Wherever you can, and let me take an example. All of us should have bought insurance in our lives, life insurance or a general insurance like a car or a health insurance, right? Now if we go 10 years back or even like 15 years back, the classic model for the insurance company, and I'm talking this, let me take a global example, I'll take an India example also. The model was to really have a broker who would really go reach out to the end customer and then buy the policies, right? I'm sure many of us in this generation would have seen LIC agent waiting and at the home to collect a check, right?
Yeah.
Now that, and even nothing to do with Corona, but as the digital came in, as technology came in, it has become more of from a B2B to C, it has become a B2C model. The broker has got eliminated most of the cases, wherein today I can go into an ICICI Lombard or HDFC Life and I can actually buy a policy, right? And what I'm trying to say in terms of the change for the consumer is, what will happen is earlier it used to be a complex rules, complex underwriting and things like that. And if we look at it, 80% of policies that customers would ask from portal directly in a B2C mode would be, a straight through processing. You really don't need to, you need to get some validations, maybe past records, maybe income document and all that, and you're done. Only a 20% would require a kind of further validation or further underwriting or further actuarial kind of effort. So my point, Suman, is, the whole industry, and insurance is one example. We can talk about airlines, we can talk about retail, of course, Amazon is the big daddy. Everything has become, it has become more B2C, more direct to customer. And secondly, when you talk about a customer experience journey, whether I'm buying an airline ticket, whether I'm booking something, why do I love Amazon? Because I can order something and wait for 5 days or 7 days, which was the earlier turnaround time for an e-commerce, right? With the model that the hub and spoke model that Amazon has done, it can actually deliver. I mean, I live in Mumbai, they have a warehouse in Bhiwandi, it almost comes the next day morning. So the point is, and these were there even before Corona. My take is that post Corona, as you switch to a more digital model in terms of buying an insurance, uh, talk about bank, you would not probably look forward to go to a bank, right? Like Srini said, you're not looking forward to go to a restaurant, you will not go to a bank, right? Earlier, change of address, you had to go and fill in a long form. Today probably you will send a scanned copy of your Aadhaar card or whatever document you want to do. That's it. So there is a clear shift in the business model for the companies, which is essentially direct to the customer. And my take is, anybody who understands the customer better would do well as a business. And if I can extend that to the employees also, anybody who understands the working model from the industry would really do well. Now, having said that, what will change after Corona? And again, I'll share a personal example. This is more of India specific, right? And I used to be a very active user in Swiggy and Zomato and those kind of apps, right? Which now obviously, the way you're thinking of going to a restaurant, you're also thinking, should I really order something from Swiggy, right? I've also realized, I've been, and again, all the names I'm taking, don't take the company literally, but there are multiple companies who were delivering, grocery, delivering other stuff at home. I have realized, and it's personal experience, that if you're not getting in any of the e-commerce sites, you can actually go back to the local kirana shop, who would still be able to give you a local vegetable guy on the truck who's supporting. So while there will be a global model and a digital model coming in, I think there would also be a hyper-localized model. And we have heard this term hyper-localization multiple times, especially in retail. But my view is that post-corona, the hyper-localization part, what I need, to do, someone who can fuse these two, the digital part of it and the hyper-localization part of it, someone who can join these two well, would have a much had amount of success than, also runs. I'm sure, the industry will see a turmoil. Some of the guys will probably shut shop. Some new players will come in. But the key thread would be, how are you really matching the digital part of the world and the hyper localization, which is the end point, to reach the customer. And that would be key.
Okay. So you talked about the online, and I think that is kind of evident to all of us that, because we are not stepping out, we would definitely order more on a Swiggy or on an Amazon. So anybody who's online would definitely benefit. But what I'm also hearing you saying is that even for industries who are not typically online, they can bring in hyper-localization along with online and create a hybrid model by which they can also benefit, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Great. So let me come to you, KK. When we talk of organizations, and again, this change started even earlier, we are talking of millennials, and millennials want to work in a company with a higher sense of, they need more autonomy, they need more purpose. And that is one area where large organizations, and this is not just in India, globally, tend to be kind of losing out. When we passed out, I remember our best thing that could have happened to us was to get a job in a big four. Whereas if you talk to a young person today, that may not be the case. They want to work in startups or whatever. But end of the day, these large MNCs, this was always required. But how do you think, because of COVID, what are the things that they can do in order to bring in this sense of purpose within the organization?
Yeah. Let me move into that. But before I do that, I would like to just follow the thread that Surit started, which is he was talking of the hub and spoke and how digitalization and so on is likely to continue, and perhaps in slightly different ways.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that digitization of a kind or the internet did was fundamentally bring many things closer to the consumer in a manner of speaking. But let's just take a step back as an organization and look at the fact as to how that happened. For many, many years, and even today, we fundamentally followed one premise, and it's a very deeply entrenched premise. If you remember, Suman, that I spoke about it with you once in conversation, that the best economy was the economy of scale.
Yes.
And that was, and is to a large extent deeply ingrained within us, that the more you produce, the cheaper it's going to become.
Yeah.
And as a result, we've had these mammoth organizations producing everything, whether it's defense equipment, down to motor cars, down to consumer goods. It's always been economy of scale.
Yeah.
It's ingrained in us from B school onwards, or from any technology person would look into that. Now, we may have to fundamentally question that premise. And I'm saying something that is very deeply fundamental, because that's the whole idea of reinvention. If we talk about reinvention, let's question certain very deeply ingrained premises in us, assumptions. What worked then may not work for us now, because technology has enabled multiple things. Is it really necessary that I have to produce a motor car in a factory at one end of India and ship it everywhere? That's the questions that will now come up, because this is the time that COVID unhappily has given us a pause for reflection. That pause for reflection, we need to do that in the right way. That is the real reinvention. That is the awareness, and that you and I and everybody else on this planet will probably have to engage in. And one of the premises that I bring to the table is question even that. What worked then, will it work in the future, when you may not have the luxury of shipping a cheap good from China anymore? Then what are we going to do? When suppose all the currencies of the world overnight by some magic wand started having a 1:1 ratio, and not 1:75 to the dollar for the rupee, then what are we going to do? Are we still going to be competitive? Is that the pattern that's going to emerge? These are the questions that we need to address fundamentally. The second question, and I think I will leave it to all of us listening in, all my colleagues and friends listening in, to probably, it's not so much the agreeing with it or the disagreement as so much as to put thought into that fundamental premise and then see where it goes. The other part of it is what you raised up, Suman, and which was the concept of how will the new entrance into the workforce, whether we call them next gen millennials or whatever jargon we coin for them. But the fact remains they are the youngsters, particularly in our country, who are coming in steeped in technology of a certain kind and moving at that pace. Now, all of a sudden, more than for you and me and everyone else, this COVID has put the brake on some of their so-called beliefs and aspirations. And every day is changing. Work for WFH, work from home, the gig economy, etc. All that is going to change. They're going to have to reevaluate themselves, ask themselves, where do I fit into the new model, if you can call it a model, because it's evolving? Where do I stand in that place? And that's a question which is a reinvention that they have to do, keeping the broader context in mind. And perhaps much of the shifts that you and I, because we are conditioned to believe a certain pattern, maybe they are the ones who will break that. They are the ones who make fundamentally question economy of scale. I don't know. I just took that as an example. They may question multiple things and bring about that workforce change that we at the moment were seeing incrementally, but now we may actually see at a, I would say, in a complete paradigm shift. It's not a new normal anymore. The word new normal is actually a misnomer. Nothing is normal. It's a new reality. I mean, that's more appropriate. That the media coined new normal and we picked it up. But actually, if you ask me deep down, nothing is normal. It's new or old. It's the new reality. And I will leave it with that for the rest of you to pick up from there. So thank you, Suman.
Thanks. So I think a lot of the things we're hearing is things that have been there, that was always required. These are the kind of fundamental changes that were happening in the economy. What the COVID has done is basically given us a time to pause and reflect, right, and address those issues. I give a simple example. Like when we were working, there were a lot of things we said it's impossible to do remotely, right? And overnight, suddenly we are finding that the impossible is possible. So these kind of things forces us to change our mindsets, the way our belief systems. And what I'm hearing you saying is that organizations also need to kind of start questioning their fundamental belief systems of how they operate, right? And only those are the ones who will kind of do well. Otherwise, if you hold on to the previous belief systems, it can be an issue. Excellent. So Srini, let me come to you on the organizational view. Is there anything else you'd like to add as to, and we'll talk a lot about the individual, because all of us in this call, each of us are impacted in a deep way, and we'll see how that kind of will evolve. But as an organization, what are the things that one should do?
I was laughing away when you said about till yesterday.
Yeah.
The organizations had 3 layers.
Yeah.
Thumb imprint, looking at eyeball, and 4 swipes. And overnight, organizations told everybody, kindly take all servers home, work from home.
Yeah.
How did the 3 layer of security vanished overnight? I can't understand. So there is so much more in the trust issue rather than anything more.
Yeah. I see Suresh smiling also.
and this 2 months or 3 months of the work the people have done from home with the 3-layered security server actually sitting at home, you can do anything with it, and they still delivered, is going to make everybody sit and think through what have we done to ourselves and what we have got to do. So organizations, I say, going ahead, will have to be more entrepreneurial in nature. Working from home, they have to trust the people. They're not employees. They're going to be 1,000 entrepreneurs working from home. If 1,000, maybe you eliminate 300, 400, maybe 600 entrepreneurs working from home. And how do you empower them to make it happen. That is one of the things that I see. And to make it happen, I think the incrementalism, even in the technology space, that was happening will be rapidly changed. It can't be no more, it can't be incrementalism no more in technology, because the way you have defined, redefining working from home and so on and so forth, the technologies have to come forefront. So it will demand so much more. Um, the 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 markets will get redefined. We spoke about. I think I see markets will get redefined. Markets will vanish. New markets will emerge, and the organizations have to really think about how do they really approach the. They have got to actually on every front in terms of looking at marketing, segmentation, and blah, blah, and reaching out to the markets, using what kind of technology and what kind of people will enable them faster to reach these markets. I think a lot of things, a big churning is underway in organization, because I've in the last 5 to 6 weeks, I've been talking to many CEOs and they're all saying, यार ये तो पता रहे पूरा ऐसा लगता है कि दुकान जो है दोबारा चालू करनी पड़ेगी, पुरानी दुकान dump it. your clients are there, your products are there, बीच का क्या करेगा वो सोच, तू अभी कैसा करेगा सोच. Over to you.
Okay, that's a nice metaphor कि दुकान वापस चालू करना है. Okay, so I think you already talked, Srini, about how it's impacting the individual. Let me come to Surid. One of the things that and this again links to the purpose thing. One of the things that's very important for employees, research is also showing this, is a sense of autonomy. Okay, to be able to manage things on their own. And autonomy can be in multiple areas, but let's say just take autonomy in managing time, right? One would assume that if somebody is working from home, they'd have more autonomy. But at the same time, I'm hearing a lot of complaints saying that, companies want to keep them on their toes. They're being told to jump on a call at any point in time. They're having to multitask with other things that they're doing in the house. Today, I read an article which said in the US, they've done some research and people are working 40% more, which is 3 hours more when they're working from home, right? This will also cause a lot of stress and burnout, right? Amongst other things. What's your view in terms of this new reality of working from home? How will it be seen? Will new norms or new policies be put in place? Because right now it's kind of people are still trying to figure it out. How do you see this going forward? Sorry.
Yes, Suman, so that's an interesting point. And in fact, I was waiting, to talk about the individuals, because you're talking about the organization, talking about markets, but how does it really impact the individuals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how will they change, and as you said earlier, that the millennials coming in, there's a way of working.
Yeah.
People who have already been into it, there's a different challenge, right? So my first point would be, and again, working from home, while it has advantages, disadvantages also, in terms of how long are you working. I think one of the key points which would emerge, my take, is that, which is already happening in pockets, but would be a lot more prevalent, is what are you measuring? Are you measuring the input or are you measuring the output, right? I can measure that, have you worked for 10 hours or 12 hours, right? But, someone can work for 12 hours and have say, 100 transactions done. Somebody can do 100 transactions in 4 hours, right? Possible, correct? I'm just giving one example. It can be, again, across industries. So I think our mindset have been traditionally that we measure the input, right? How many hours has this guy been logged in? How many hours has he been at office? And again, in our industry, in technology industry, again, it was, as you work from home was always there, the volume has, of course, increased multifold. But I think the measurements will change. It will not be anymore that how many hours you have worked, but are you really able to get the output, right? Gets you the flexibility also, earlier it used to be, you work from 9 to 5 or, 10 to 6 or whatever. Now probably you are able to manage your own schedule. So my take is, it be a very flexible model, and the focus in terms of the measurements, would definitely go towards a output measurement, and input measurement would be absolutely invent. The other key point about individual, and Suman, I'd probably want to share a quick experience from a very different, it's not industry, it's sports, and keeping in line with the theme of the webinar, reinventing the self, right? So
Yeah.
there are advantages for people, they have been doing it in a certain way, and when it changes, you have a challenge. How do you reinvent yourself? It's not just reskilling. I actually call it reinventing. And I'll probably take a cricket example, quick 30 seconds or maybe 45 seconds to tell. This I heard Rahul Dravid in an interview, in one of our offsites. When, he was describing his life as a cricketer, and I presume most of us would know Rahul Dravid, so he needs no introduction. But he was telling that, he struggled with the T20s, right? If you look at his record, he'll probably walk into any test team across times. One day is pretty good, but T20s, he hasn't played for as much because it came in, the IPLs came in towards the end of his career. But he was telling, and the point I'm trying to say is, there's a lot of unlearning that has to happen before you do new stuff for the individual. What Rahul said in that interview was that when he was a aspiring cricketer, in school, right? His cricket coach used to teach him that you should always hit along the ground. You cannot afford to, because the baseline was test match. If you play a lofted shot, you'll be caught and you'll be out, right? So his DNA, his learning was that I must hit along the ground, otherwise I'll get out. That was 80s, and when he was probably a school cricket, and then 90s when he actually played. Now comes T20 and IPL, right? When, unless you hit out, you'll probably be the one who's probably let your team down, right? So Rahul was explaining about the way they had to. So of course, it's not about skill. Undoubtedly he's a skilled cricketer. He doesn't need to justify that. But the whole reinvention, and of course he didn't play as much. And he was talking about his interaction with Jack Callis also, who's again, similar time, similar challenges, not great in one day and test, but not as much in T20, is that the new rules of the game, So my point, Suman, is that the basic skill stays with you. If you're a good cricketer, you're a good cricketer. You have to unlearn, and of course, the professional careers are much longer than life of a cricketer. So, cricketer's life is much shorter, but for the professionals, there is a much longer runway. So I think the skill stays with you, right? Whatever you know, right? And of course, you need to sharpen the skill. But post-COVID, when things change, when the environment change, you're working from home, new models, I think it will be more about going back to the Rahul's point, that how do you reinvent yourself to play a different game? And I think, that will be the key for a person to be successful versus, somebody who could not take the new challenge.
I really like that metaphor of that the rules of the game are changing, which is why you need to also shed some of the belief systems, which is also unlearning, right? And the other one, which you said, is also very powerful. And we've been talking about this even pre-corona, saying that it finally needs to be output based.
Right.
But it's easier said than done. So it also means organizations, the levels, the layers, the middle managers who are used to just tracking people on how much time they're spending and whether they're in office. You're saying fundamentally that has to change, that the way they think has to change completely. It has to be based on output, which also means that we have to start defining what that output needs to be.
Right. Absolutely. And that output is different for different industries. It will not be same.
Yes.
There can be baselines, we have it defined very clearly. I think in the world of finance, you look at a particular industry, what kind of daily sales outstanding they have, what's the benchmark and all that. I think that kind of benchmarking and that kind of, output benchmarking would be prevalent, and we'll see more of that coming in from the successful companies who lead the pack and coming in from the, the leaders in the markets.
Excellent. KK, let me come back to you. And this is a very interesting topic. And I know as a master coach, you were talking to a lot of people, right? So do you see this in your coaching conversations? Are people actually talking about reinventing? Do they see that the games is changing, or are they still looking at it very incrementally? What's your view on unlearning?
It's a good question, but actually, Suman, if I can take the liberty of a small suggestion, perhaps it would be
Sure.
good to have Srini come in here, and then I'll take over from there. Only because
Yeah.
what Surit left us with is a very good state, because Srini works a lot with the career part of it with youngsters. So I mean, I'm also very curious to see the path. So if you don't mind,
Absolutely.
perhaps I'm looking forward to hearing what Srini has to say, and I'll happily contribute after that.
Absolutely.
Srini, it's
Srini,
ball
all
in your
yours.
court. Srini,
You
I'm a
want to?
sports coach. I've just tossed the ball to your court.
Um, see, what Surit said, and in the last segment of my answering last this thing, I also said about organizations looking for entrepreneurial leaders within. I also say a lot of other things perhaps changing. Even, for example, it may not be salary structure anymore. It may be, for each of these, it may change in terms of saying that, okay, this is a base salary, and what you get, take away 20%, 30% of it. So there could be n number of models that could emerge. Also a couple of things I would like to add in this context is very interesting. Though in terms of the first thing that we spoke about was globalization, and there are a couple of issues, very interesting things happening while technology is breaking, the sustainability and environment is going to shape. But if we see the trends even before COVID was economies were closing up, Brexits and America getting out of the treaties of transatlantic or North American. So all economies trying to close. This one thing that was developing. On the contrary, if you look at Europe, the nations are struggling to keep alive even their what do you call the water, electricity, and they are short of people. So they're looking for people. Actually, I was also thinking how the world will take shape, because on one hand there is a huge shortage of manpower that's going to happen around the world, and other hand these countries are closing. So these are all contrarian things that are happening, but they're opening a lot for those people who are entrepreneurial in nature, whether it is organizational front or it is international front. I can tell you people with skill sets, for example, even when the countries are closing, you have seen Canada and Australia, based on the skill sets, they're encouraging people to come in. I saw people flooding to this country. So these are happening simultaneously. So I feel people who can break their own barriers, who can reinvent themselves, people who can ask very fundamental questions. I always felt, irrespective of whether past or recent past or COVID or in the future, people with three basic elements or three basic traits, I feel are going to succeed any place. And each one has to ask whether how many of these traits do I have? The first of the one I feel is an individual has to be a learner for life. So whether Surit said unlearn, learn, unlearn, you got to ask anything thrown at me, whether I am willing to look at it, or even if it is thrown at me, how do I ask the youngsters, have you got a vision 2030? Tell me now. This is the question I ask. The vision to look at, can you say have you asked what you love doing, what you are good at? Which industries these can be deployed, and where will these industries be? Technology changes, sustainability, environmental shifts, global shift, how these industries are going to be in 10 years down the line. And where do you fit in? What are the things that you're going to work upon yourself? What are things you need to learn? So one has to be a learner. So that is the fundamental thing I look at. Second important thing I look at is courage. Courage is very, very, very important. The statistics say 69 to 70% of people on a Sunday night say that Monday aa gaya, office jana hai. Yeah, so they are doing job. They're just on roller coaster, not realizing why they're on the roller coaster, and they don't even question. Yeah. So courage to fail is very, very important. Courage to fail. When I say courage to fail, fail means first attempt in learning. That is fail. So how much are you willing to fail? How much are you attempt to learn? That is very, very, very important. So if you push when will the growth happen? Growth will not happen playing cricket in the same arena. You got to push the arena. When that's what Rahul Dravid was talking about, the struggle of his. Okay, can you push the arena? Only when you push the arena, you will discover more about yourself, what more I can do, and what more I need to learn, and to adapt to these shifts and changes. Are you going to wait for others to bring the change, or are you willing to push the boundaries and change? So that is a second very, very critical thing I feel each one of us has to inculcate. Third important thing I feel, whether it is organizations in a physical space or in a diverse space, all the more in diverse space. Over the last couple of decades, this networking has become a big name, and the entrepreneurships and startups all have become because entrepreneurial people with like mindsets have come together. So how do you build a cohort or co-founders or a team that can go and conquer the world? So that third ingredient I feel very, very important is humility. How humble are you? How well that you gel with people, and how people get attracted to you, where egolessness, and there are a lot of states that one need to. I struggle with my ego, I know, but but we have got to break those barriers, and we have got to tell ourselves how humble I can be to create the teams, get people, network, and that's the only way. Only way people are the ones who make every idea reality. Ideas are dime a dozen. Without people, nothing can happen. So these are the three things I feel: learner for life, courage to fail, and humility. These are the three things I feel are very, very fundamental going ahead. The way disruptive is happening in everywhere, and COVID has accentuated and accelerated this disruptiveness. Over to you, Sumit.
Excellent. I think you've summed it up very well. Those traits. What I would like to add is, those traits we've been talking about for a while, right? And that's about reinventing. The need was always felt. But I think what we are also saying is the time has come for us to reflect, because earlier, if you didn't do all of that, you would still kind of maybe not rise to the top, but you'd still kind of float along. Whereas what we are hearing now is that, as in this new reality, the risk of not doing something probably starting to outweigh the risk of doing something, right? So it's time to really start moving, and because these are tough, right? Courage and failure, I mean, they sound very simple, but they are extremely tough to do. They are basically changing human behaviors at a fundamental level. So would you tend to agree with that, saying that what you're saying is that
No,
we have to do that now, otherwise we don't have an option?
No, organizations are going to subconsciously, because we do a lot of things very interesting. We do a lot of things consciously till it becomes subconscious, and the subconscious will start doing. And the organization at subconscious level are going to eliminate people based on these 2-3 parameters.
Okay, over to you, KK, just to build on that, since you had passed it to Srini.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I will just extend the conversation, and then you said, "What's my perspective as a coach?"
Yeah.
And I've coached a lot of senior leaders in recent times, even post the COVID lockdown and so on. And I also coach a bunch of youngsters, as you know, Suman. Not
Yeah.
starting from kindergartners on my tennis court, I've covered it. So you get to see a lot of people, and couple of things that we normally do when we coach. And this is where this is a very good time for that. In fact, right now, the word that is being floating all over the internet space, people keep using in the COVID era, the words like resilience. They say we must be resilient, and it's kind of become a buzzword. But what is built into the word resilience? I mean, I have my own take on a few things for which I will share. A couple of words I would bring in. One of them is the fact that resolve. when you coach somebody, you ask them, what's your ambition? What's your dream? What's your goal? What's your passion? And then we kind of linearly work towards getting them there. Or rather, the person gets there, he comes to me, says, coach, I'm 500 in the world of tennis, make me 100 players. So it's still a linear thing in a manner of speaking. Though the path may not be linear, the target is linear. The question is that in tomorrow's world, will the same goals continue to hold? I have been derailed in many ways. I don't have an Olympics this year in all probability. I do not have the goals my company has set for me this year. I may be a junior manager, middle manager, senior manager, top leader, it doesn't matter. I don't any longer have those same goals. The goals are changing. The goalpost has shifted quite dramatically. So how am I going to reorient my own personal resolve and stick to it? What is my new resolve? How do I redefine that? What can I do to redefine my own personal ambitions and dreams when I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow morning? Earlier, it seemed pretty organized. Life was conforming. Organizations rewarded you for conformity. That's a very interesting shift. They did not reward you for being a maverick. In fact, that was discouraged in most big companies. Small companies encouraged you. Then they said, go start, go and be a startup. That's fine. Go have fun. But in the company, though, that's not a fun place. You're not encouraged to move beyond the boundaries of conformity. I won't say comfort zone, I'll say conformity. Though you do give lip service to be creative and entrepreneurial and all that, but actually you got rewarded for conformity. Now that is changing. We don't know the new reality. We don't know the new paradigm that will come in here. So what goes beyond conformity? That's where you use the word, Suman, I'll pick it up. We need. This is a glorious opportunity for everyone on this call and other outside of the call to take time for reflection. As a coach, I say reflect. You don't have to spend the 4 hours on the commute you did earlier or the 2 hours. Use that to your advantage. Take a break, even if it's for 15 minutes or 20 minutes a day, to reflect on what I want to be. Where am I now? Who am I? I mean, what am I is better than even who am I. What am I in real terms? This is the real beginning of reinvention. And it doesn't matter if you are a junior, senior, middle, top, it doesn't matter. Wherever we are, we take that pause to ask ourselves, what am I? And how can I, or what am I trying to achieve in life in a different kind of way? Not, I want to get the next promotion or get a 30% salary hike and then go on a vacation to the Bahamas. This is not really it anymore. It's changed because you won't even have a flight to the Bahamas, honestly. So you actually have to rethink a lot on that space. The word that we use in coaching, or rather the great coaches use, like Tim Baldwin and so on, is that moving beyond conformity. And Srini mentioned it, Sorik touched on it, and so did you, Suman. The actual coaching terminology, it's called mobility. The mobility of the mind. The mind has to be ready to move or be moved. We should stop being stuck in the old thought process. Now, this is really hard. The lifelong learner part of it, the courage, the humility to know I don't know, I got to relearn, unlearn, all that bundles into that one thought of being mobile, because you are looking to embrace a future that is completely unknown. It's like my taking and thrusting you in the Brazilian rainforest and telling you survive, and you have never had any survival kit before. You weren't a commando. So what would you do in the 2 months that is there to make yourself into some kind of a commando, living on the whatever is available off the ground? I mean, I'll stop with this rather than get carried away. So I'm going to take a pause here and give it back to you, Sumant, and take it where you want.
No, that was really very insightful, and I'm still trying to kind of get all those metaphors that you talked about.
Here I would like to add.
Sure, Srini.
KK, beautifully you took it ahead. Actually, I always felt that what KK told, who am I and what am I? I feel the journey of life is all about this one thing, asking this fundamental question, who am I and what more am I? See, it's very, very interesting. When I said about those numbers of 69% and blah, blah, people on Sunday night, I think this is a great opportunity, great time for each one of us to actually ask this question. See, am I at the right place? What is that I really want to have in my life? What is that I really want to do in life? I think because a lot of people keep telling me, and because once they get stuck into families and EMIs and they don't have guts to get out of it. But I usually ask them, यार तुमको क्या चाहिए? 2 वक्त की रोटी और छत है क्या? Do you have enough in your bank balance that for 2, 3, 4 years you get out of it and do what you really want to do? Will you sustain? वो सब बोलते हैं हाँ सर हिलाता है, हाँ हो सकता है, फिर क्यों नहीं लेता? Why don't you jump? I think COVID gives that opportunity for everybody to think. Because anyway, the future is about being like entrepreneur in organizations. And why better not to kick off your entrepreneurial journey in whatever way? Whether I look at I look at all the 3 people, 4 people sitting in this, some point of time we kicked something or other and started jumping. That's in short, I would like to say, just jump, take your call.
Yeah, so that's a very powerful thing. This who am I? It sounds almost paradoxical. On one hand, a lot of us are stuck in that proverbial deer in the headlights because we don't know, it's blinding, we can't see, and we are kind of frozen, we don't know what to do. At the same time, what I'm hearing is that this is the best time to start asking some very fundamental questions of who am I and what am I, right? To use a word what KK said, this is a glorious time, and I think that's very inspiring. Okay, so I think let's quickly turn to some questions. We've had quite a few questions which have come up. So one is from Venkat. He's saying, I'm in food and pharma service field. My main role is travel across India to attend customer site for installation and commissioning and on-site service. How this field is going to change? Please share your views on this business. So again, it's open. Would one of you would like to take this?
I think Surad is the right person to take, I suppose.
Because this goes back to that initial question, right? About
Surad,
fine.
your mic is switch off. Your
Yeah.
mic is
No, so I was looking for someone to unmute. Okay. No, so okay. So my thought, when I read the question that travel across India to attend customer site for installation, and there was a big point earlier also, right? No matter how much of digital we do, there'll be some physical models that has to be done. So
Yeah.
so of course, I don't know, the kind of commissioning and the kind of work you do, but my broad view would be, and that goes back to the point about hyper-localization, that how much of it would actually require you to travel, and vis-a-vis, what all can be done. The same point on hub and spoke, right? What you can do locally. And again, I'm giving a generic answer because it may be very specific for your industry. But if there's an installation required, how much can be done by someone who's actually there, who's part of the local community, and how much of support you need to really bring in from outside, that would probably be the key.
Yeah, I also feel that organizations perhaps will start identifying people in and around with the skill sets and promote those on them as entrepreneurial at that end, and put them as an extension of you. So it could be freelancers onboarded, and then say, okay, to this extent you can do to more, then perhaps there will be reinforcement from organizations. That's what I see it as.
If I can come in very briefly, Venkat, my short take on this is, as Sorit said, my knowledge of your industry, I will start by assuming that I am a zero, simply because I'm only a consumer of whatever your industry does. So the fundamental thing that you need to ask yourself again is that what can I, it doesn't matter what level you are in the company at all, you still are an influencer. What can I do to overcome this challenge? Now, somebody may have an idea that we can have more installation, train people on site. Someone else may say something else. But the fundamental thing is the answer really is with you. You know that line better than anybody else, and you know your organization, and you need to influence them to deal with what's likely to happen. The answers will really come with some deeper reflection on your part. Some of it may go wrong. Like we said, we will learn from failure and so on, but the change will happen. And when the change happens, it will be a fundamental change that will actually create something quite powerful. I will leave it with that. I know I sound motivational, but actually it's much less than that. It's quite practical. If you put your mind to it, you would come up with 2 or 3 ideas, and your ideas will be much better than any of us can ever tell.
So what I'm taking away from this is, there will be disaggregation, like retail industry. If we take, I mean, without knowing what exactly the area Venkat is in, but I can think of the retail industry, which is typically very brick and mortar. You go to a store and you buy your stuff. I mean, retail has been talking of multi-channel for the longest time, right? That you can pick it up online, you can choose online because it's easier to choose, but you can go and pick it up from a store, or you can go to a physical store and return it. So, different channels interplay. And so I think a lot of these industries which are more brick and mortar will probably have to start looking at their value chain and seeing which parts can be probably changed or taken more into the online thing. Basically coming up with a hybrid model is the sense I'm getting. Great. So I think let's go on to the next question, which is from Uday. He's saying many companies in travel, tourism, and hospitality segments are going to wind up. Shops are going to take maximum brunt of current scenario. What company segments outside of IT, ITES spectrum, according to you, have potential in post-COVID era to flourish? Not what is discussed here about change, ways of doing business, hybrid model, digitization of local business. So what companies? So I think we did speak of a few, but yeah, travel is definitely one which I think is going to be a big challenge if somebody travel tourism are related, right? Because it's essentially about going out, right? Hospitality again could be, a hybrid thing. But let me open it up for the panel. Would somebody like to give an answer to this?
May I address here, because this is
Yeah,
just
sure. Go ahead.
just my experience. I especially in the space of education.
So you may be a little louder.
Yeah, I'm audible.
Yeah, better.
Okay. See, I wrote an article called 9/11 to COVID-19. And this, though very limited to education space, but I feel that this is relevant to quite a few spaces. Way back in the first .com era, a lot of things happened. For example, education is one where we launched a website in 99, 2000 for supplementing, complementing school education, university education, and so on and so forth. And we surprisingly saw, our market, we thought that it will be India, and we launched for India. Yeah. But suddenly we saw over the next 6-7 months, 90% of the people who were using it were from the Middle East, Central Asia, North Africa. So I took a suitcase. My flight was just next day to 9/11. 10/11 was my flight, and it got cancelled. And after a week, I took a flight and I went to Kuwait City. And in the flight, there were only 3 people. And I traveled across some 19 countries, meeting institutions and individuals and families which were using these websites and so on and so forth. And realized that they are ready for the leap, and they are very proactive in taking the leap. Though the institutions were very conservative, the individuals were very proactive. Yeah. And more or less for the next 5.5 years, one who went with a suitcase stayed back in Dubai and did a lot of stuff in that area. Slowly, people realizing that technology can make a huge difference. And he came back to India in 2005, 2006. To cut the story short, it took a COVID-19 for the entire education fraternity to fall off the chair and back to the wall. They're not knowing what to do and running helter-skelter to embrace this technology-enabled education, which they detested, hated in the very first place because of their own insecurities, their own fiefdoms being pulled down, and so on and so forth. So it is a 20 long years, and I'm sure there are many, many such sectors where technology could have impacted long time ago. And it is time, I'm sure, it is going, because when I'm talking about organizations, they're all looking at redefining everything. So it is going to make a huge difference. Hope I addressed that. So we each one actually has to ask, because looking ahead, these technologies that are already available and the technologies that are coming in, how you can make use of those to impact everybody, impact every stakeholder, from the client to people within the organization, outside organization, customers within, customers outside, and how you increase your efficacy and efficiency. All those things are on the table right now. I am sure they're on the table.
Great. So I think we have time for maybe just one more question. And this is a very interesting one. And I think this is something that has got all of us thinking. All this technology is fine. So the question is from Shantanu. He's saying, what about friendship between co-students who hardly see each other? What about remoteness in relationships? What about connect between employees, empathy in the workplace, stress busting by human interaction? In a nutshell, what would happen to the personal touch?
I may
Well,
just
let me for a change give a response first.
yes.
I think I'm doing a lot more personal touch today on Zoom calls. I'm connecting with friends who have not been in touch with for years, and that's very interesting in the sense that technology as enabler has always been there. It's basically what you do with it. Yeah, of course, you can never replace a handshake with technology. I mean, you still need to physically meet the person. My sense is, technology can be used pretty well to actually remain in touch with people. Over to any of you.
Next one, that's a very good question, because no matter how much of technology we have, few things you cannot do digitally, right? I mean, I talk about a very personal experience, right? When I'm at office and after a long call or after a meeting, maybe I can walk over into a colleague's office and have a cup of tea or a coffee with him, right? So that part. And if you ask me, what am I missing really? Of course, all of us working from home, there are measurements and all that, but that softer part of the interaction, right? Of course, I'm still talking to friends and all that, but I think that's what I don't know, we won't call it a new normal, but the newer ways of things. Do I miss it? Yes, I absolutely miss it. But then we need to get adjusted and find out our own ways. So there is no universal answer for this, but you must have realized two things. One is, I'll talk hard data. If you talk about the companies, the stock prices that have gone up after COVID, one of the biggest names would be Zoom, which what are we using right now, correct? If Zoom is listed, and it has actually its market cap crossed that of Uber also. And I was actually wondering that, all the conferences that I've been to over last 3 years, the flagship of digital was Uber, and here's a company, Zoom. Of course, we are using it right now. It actually, its market crossed Uber's, and again, it's coming back. So what I'm trying to say, technology has always been there. Now, can it replace all the human, emotions and the connects and the touches? No. It has done a good part in terms of, using Zoom, using WhatsApp to have, I've got multiple friend groups, and I'm sure all of you have, which is, school group, college group, and things like that. So there's a good side to it. At the same time, there are things like walking over to someone, and having a cup of tea together. That has to wait for a while. So I think each of us, like the skill part, we need to find out our own sweet spot. In this context also, this is very, very individual specific, and we need to find out our own sweet spot, what works for me best, and that's probably the way forward for all of us.
Can I? Sorry, Saurabh, did you finish?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I'll just add, I'll go back to a few things that I said earlier about the whole question itself, and it's a powerful question that was raised. fundamentally, the human being is a very social animal, as Suman knows from all his knowledge about emotional intelligence. We are fundamentally very social. Though we train our brains to be logical and rational and IQ and data and all that, everything boils down fundamentally to our levels of EQ and emotional intelligence. So we are social. And so the question that comes up is a very, it's a question that would be uppermost in most people's mind. The answer to that is really, again, very individual because we are social. The answer to that is we are seeing again the context in a very conforming way. We are looking at it from the point of view was I went to office, I did this, I had my interactions with my colleagues like this. For a moment, if you are not a worker going to the office day in and day out, if you are an entrepreneur, you would have a completely different social life, so to speak, a working social life. And I think Srini would agree with me because those of us who are entrepreneurs have a very different social life. So fundamentally, very often those who have worked in offices before will see that shift in their mind, the conformity to mobility coming, that what's my new social interaction style, and cover up whatever deficiencies they feel or lack of in the old style. And I will leave it with that. Thank you.
Great. So I think, we're it's 6:30. We need to wrap up. So before we wrap up, very quickly, let's hear some closing comments from each one of us.
I just want to take a minute or so, a few seconds
Sure.
on the previous question. If you look at Howard Gardner's theory of intelligences, there are 8 intelligences. 7 of the 8 intelligences, actually, you don't need people interaction. And the 8 intelligences you spoke about interpersonal intelligence. Perhaps rest of the 7 could be handled online, and the 8 to sharpen in the initial 14, 15, 16 years, fundamentally, because when a lot of people ask me, educationists ask me about children confined to homes. So I tell them that rest 7 technology can take care. In the last one, hope the parents are playing enough with their children, and perhaps the neighborhood child, you are sure that there is no COVID, you can play with that, with the child. But yes, actually, I feel that schools are required only for this 8th intelligence of interpersonal skills. Rest 7, you don't actually need the schools. In fact, children, because right now I'm running capacity building of state education system classes, every class about 2 lakh children attending classes live. Their children give feedback to the education minister in the review and report meeting. They say that we will come to school to play with children, but sir, ye wala classes kabhi band mat karna. These are far better than the classes I ever attended in the school. That's the report that the students are telling to the teacher.
Wow. No, that's quite an amazing experience. And if, we would have loved to hear that, what Srini is doing with the government of Delhi, the way they're reaching out with tens of thousands of kids, it's a story in itself. Maybe some other day. So we really need to wrap up. So Srini, since we were with you, would you like to just say some closing remarks?
No, I just say that it's time for each one of us to ask a question. Very simple question, I will say. Ask yourself, what do you really love doing? So when I ask this, there are 3 sub-questions to this. I ask, kindly you need to ask this question, these 3 questions. Number 1, what will I continue to do even if I am punished? What will I continue to do even if I am not paid? For what will I get out of the bed at 3 a.m. in the morning without nobody waking me up? If you can answer these 3 questions, actually you got to ask yourself, what are you really doing? Is it worth doing what you're doing? Or you got to ask that thing that you wish to do, what you really love doing. Over to you, Sue.
Excellent. KK?
Yeah, thanks, Sumana. Actually, thanks everybody. It was very nice to be on the panel and share our thoughts. Fundamentally, it's very simple. I've trained a lot with someone called Professor Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who was the person who formed the concept of the flow state. And in the new world that we are going to enter, the new reality, we need to individually look with and find out for us what works best. What will give me, where can I think I can make the biggest difference, like Srini listed out all those factors. I would just build on those. That's one of them. Then where will I continue to grow and learn? Sorit was saying that also. Relearn, unlearn, learn. Learning has to be integrated into my daily life. And finally, and most importantly, what gives me the greatest joy. And if I have all the three in equal measure, then the world opens up to me. So all we need to do is take this chance when we reinvent ourselves and move into the new future, whatever it may be, ask ourselves, what is it I need to do, particularly in these three contexts? So thank you all, and back to you, soon.
Thanks, KK. Surid?
Yes, Suman, so I think KK and Srini have covered all. I would say, going with the theme that you had set up, reboot, relaunch, tool, and reinvent yourself. I think, that's the key. It would be a very different reinvention for each individual. And I would absolutely say that, one is what you like doing, one is what you're good at doing. And, it may or may not be always same. But, as somebody said, how do you make sure that you do what you like and, do it, much better than anybody else? So again, in line with the whole theme, I would say all of us, let's reinvent ourselves. Thanks to each of you in terms of great discussion. And I'm sure, we'll emerge stronger and we'll emerge to a much better future. Thanks.
Super. So thank you so much. Thank you all the participants for this session. So Surid, I will definitely try to start unlearning. KK, to pick up your word, I think it's been glorious, this session. And Srini, I think you now getting this more. Definitely, I'm going to get up at 3 thinking, who am I? But that's a very, very deep question. I need to figure that out. Okay,
Thanks, Suman. Thanks, Suman. It has been a wonderful moderating and summing it up. I think it's amazing. Thanks, KK. Thanks, Suhrut.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.